Hello. Today we're going to go over every station on the Geelong line and rank them on a tier list. I'm not including stations outside of the Mikey area towards Warrnambool because frankly that would take way too long considering frequencies and distances. Maybe in a future video. I will rank stations according to three main criteria: their passenger experience, their integration into the surroundings and connections, and their overall vibes. Without further ado, let's get started. Waurn Ponds Station is the southern terminus of the Geelong line. It was initially built in 2014 and recently rebuilt in 2022 as a part of the regional rail revival, and it is where we will begin today. The station has two platforms connected by a pedestrian overpass. Either platform can be used for trains terminating, but I've only ever seen trains arrive at platform 1. The platforms feature plenty of seats in cover, including these shelters on platform 1 that fully surround the benches and give extra protection from sun and rain. The bridge connecting the two platforms is easily accessible with ramps and lifts available. There's an indoor waiting area and ticket office too. Where Waurn Ponds Station falls short is its connectivity and overall missed potential. There are 3 bus routes, the 41, 42 and 45, connecting the station to nearby Deakin University, Waurn Ponds Shopping Centre and Armstrong Creek. The 41 and 42 come every 20 minutes on weekdays and hourly on weekends, while the 45 is worse, only coming every hour on weekdays and every 2 hours on weekends. That is to say, your options are pretty limited. The bus irregularity wouldn't be as much of an issue if the station was actually located in a convenient location, which it is not. Waurn Ponds Station sits on the southernmost edge of the suburb, Sugargum Drive, a full 40-minute walk from both the shopping centre and the university. And the walk isn't particularly pleasant either, contending with the car-centric design which requires some amount of walking across or along the Princess Highway. There is, however, a large car park which was upgraded in the rebuild, now numbering 292 spaces. While this is useful if you're coming from the Surf Coast area, it reinforces the car dependency that Waurn Ponds seems to be built around. I would rate Waurn Ponds as a B-tier station. It serves its purpose of connecting the Surf Coast and the Torquay area to the V-Line network and has a fine passenger experience, but it's lacking on integration into the local area. Marshall Station is our next stop along the Geelong line. It was built in 2005 as a reopening of the old station, which closed to passengers in 1957. It was also the terminus of the Geelong line before Waurn Ponds Station was opened. The regional rail revival rebuilt Marshall Station in 2024 in much the same way it did for Waurn Ponds, with a new platform, an overpass and a completely rebuilt main station building, as well as a number of other features surrounding the station. With this, the duplication of the track between Waurn Ponds and Marshall was also completed. The experience of this station is very similar to Waurn Ponds. There's a bigger waiting room, shelter and seating on the platforms, but also just looks very nice with the white roofs and the overpass. As you come outside the station though, there's a lot of concrete and not much shade. I was very glad to be wearing a broad brim hat on the day I filmed this because the sun was quite harsh walking around these bus bays. Supposedly though, the trees planted in the rebuild will eventually grow to provide this much needed shade. Marshall is a bit better than Waurn Ponds when it comes to integration with its surroundings. There are some bike paths built around the station with a secure bike parking facility to allow people to more easily ride to the station instead of driving, which you would need to do over walking as it is surrounded by low density housing. If you're driving though, there is still a sizable car park. Bus routes 40, 52, 54 and 55 run to or through the interchange here, which connects Marshall Station to Geelong Station, Deakin Uni, Ocean Grove, Torquay and surrounding areas. Despite the large interchange area, the buses are quite infrequent, each only coming every hour, with Route 40 not running at all on weekends. Something I've noticed that doesn't make sense is that while V-Line trains run at an increased frequency of 20 minutes on weekends, buses are the opposite, coming every hour or not at all. Overall, Marshall secures itself a ranking as a high B-tier station. It does its job, and the experience is slightly better than Waurn Ponds, especially considering the access and storage for bikes. But the lack of shade and irregular bus service drag it back, its surroundings lagging behind the resources invested in the station itself. South Geelong is the third station on the Geelong line which was rebuilt in the regional rail revival, and it marks the end of the track duplication from Waurn Ponds towards Geelong, the reason for which we will get into when we talk about Geelong Station. South Geelong shares many features of the other two revived stations: the overpass, accessibility, shelter, waiting room, but the colour theming of the roof is blue rather than brown or white, which I personally like the most of the three. It also has the same secure bike parking as Marshall. Something I did notice is the overpass is a little more dark and grimy than Waurn Ponds or Marshall, but at least it's not an underpass. North Geelong. The thing that elevates South Geelong Station for me is how it fits into the South Geelong area. There are houses and shops on all sides compared to Waurn Ponds and Marshall, which were on the edge of their respective suburb, bordered by empty paddocks. In addition, it's very close to Cardinia Park, and by extension, GMHBO Stadium. This allows footy fans to easily get to their game, only a 5-minute walk or less from the station. People I know have told me about their experience when trying to return from Melbourne and being surprised by a packed train of supporters coming down to Geelong. The level of access provided is just great. There is a bus connection to Route 1, which runs regularly from Deakin Waurn Ponds through the city centre and then to North Shore. I think this level of frequency should be the bare minimum for buses in Geelong, but what do I know? Worth mentioning also is supposedly the Sky Bus to Avalon Airport, which is very confusing since the only indication of this is the small logo at the top of this sign, and the text reading Avalon Airport. This is a bit of a problem, since I imagine it's easy to interpret this sign as saying Route 1 also goes to Avalon. I couldn't find a way on the website to book tickets from or to South Geelong, so I don't have a clue how you would actually catch it here. There's a car park, but it's smaller, indicating the greater integration of the station into its area. South Geelong may look the same as the other revived stations, but the location and connectivity make it much more useful. A tier. Geelong Station is located right in the city's CBD. It was opened on the 1st of November 1856, and it's one of the only two operating passenger stations in Victoria to still have its 1800s train shed. The station is actually listed as heritage, so the building has remained much the same as it was nearly 200 years ago, with minor upgrades and an alternative overpass to the heritage stairs, which allowed for accessibility for people with disabilities. It's one of the main bus terminals for the city, the other being the Moorabool Street bus interchange. The preserved train shed roof provides comprehensive cover from the elements over all three platforms. There's a cafe inside the station which sells a variety of drinks, confectionery, and hot food, and a large customer service desk next to the indoor waiting area. The seating next to the bus stops is also undercover, and there is plenty of it. Secure bike parking is also available. The sections of the platforms that aren't covered by the shed are quite bare though, with minimal seating and cover. This is a problem if you want to escape from the trapped diesel fumes. Although, unlike another station much later to come, trains don't linger here long enough for the fumes to be too much of an issue. There are a lot of ads on the walls, but at least it's not electronic screens. Wait, there's a V-Line soccer competition? If you drove here, your experience is a little more irritating. Although there is limited parking on the CBD side of the station, the majority is on the other side, over by the Princes Highway. Since there is still no entrance on that side, passengers must walk down some stairs, under the railway bridge, and then back around and up into the station. A little encouragement to skip the car, I guess. And there's no other reason for that at the moment. Although the station is surrounded by roads, it's pretty easy to walk from here to the waterfront or the main CBD. There's even these information signs for travellers and tourists. The bus interchange serves all of these lines on screen, operated by CDC and Macquarie's, as well as V-Line coach routes to Apollo Bay, Ballarat, Colac and Warrnambool. There is a Gull bus which runs an express from Geelong Station to Melbourne Airport too. There's one more thing we have to talk about with Geelong Station, and that's the South Geelong Tunnel. This single-track tunnel connects Geelong to South Geelong. Since the tunnel is heritage listed, any proposal to widen it or rebuild it would be faced with heavy opposition. Another tunnel would have to be dug in parallel, and this is right through the centre of Geelong, under buildings where there is already not much space for rail. This means that trains have to wait for a few minutes at platform 1 to allow the train coming from South Geelong to come through. This bottleneck prevents high frequencies and currently means a number of services terminate at South Geelong rather than going through to Waurn Ponds. Geelong Station is beautiful and still very functional. It's very interconnected at the heart of the city, and the experience as a passenger is very good. I would rank Geelong Station as an S tier. Originally called West Geelong until 1886, North Geelong is a good example of what the majority of stations on the Geelong line looked like before the regional rail revival and the level crossing removal project. Since its construction, it has had the platforms rebuilt and extended, a main station building constructed, and a pedestrian underpass built to replace the level crossing. As a passenger, the experience here is pretty average. There isn't much shelter on the platforms, only the station building roof and a few metal shelters up the north end. The platforms themselves are also pretty narrow, considering the other stations we've looked at so far. There is at least an indoor waiting area. To get between the platforms or to the bus stop, you need to walk down this long ramp and through this narrow and dark underpass. There's a medium-sized car park at the station and a bus to Corio. The station is surrounded by roads and highways, although it is technically possible to walk up the hill towards other buses and shops. It's not integrated with housing at all, and to get to the suburb of Rippleside and other nearby shops, you need to cross the highway. North Shore Station is closer to the Spirit of Tasmania, so don't bother trying to connect from here. There's not much else to say about North Geelong. It does its job, but not too much beyond that. A solid C tier. North Shore is a small, desolate station in the middle of a rail yard. There is an island platform, which is used by the Geelong line, and a third platform next to the street with standard gauge track, which is used by freight trains and the overland to Adelaide. It's the only place in Geelong where the overland stops, which is why the sign has a hyphenated Geelong next to the name. I'd hate for anyone's first impression of Geelong to be North Shore, but maybe that's symbolic of something. North Shore's island platform is very barren. It doesn't even have a station building. Well, it used to, but it burnt down in 1990, and it was replaced by these metal bus shelters. Otherwise, the platform is completely bare and the station unstaffed. You need to cross the tracks to get to the car park. You could technically connect here to the Adelaide via the overland, but that only comes twice a week, so good luck with that. The Spirit of Tasmania is also a 20-minute walk away, which is still too far when you're carrying heavy bags, especially through the industrial wasteland. Bus routes 1, 22 and 23 terminate here, bringing in riders from residential areas. The 23 terminates in the centre of North Shore and heads back up to Corio, skirting the edge of Norlane. This bus is necessary for the people who live in Corio and Norlane to avoid using Corio Station, which we'll get to Corio Station. At the very least, North Shore does have a small car park, so it works alright as a small park and ride for the northern Geelong area. North Shore Station is really disappointing. It connects Geelong to South Australia and Tasmania, but it does so in such a strange and hostile way to passengers. D tier. Corio Station is a small island platform located next to the Viva Energy oil refinery, one of only 2 remaining refineries in Australia. It's even more desolate and bare than North Shore. There are 2 benches in the narrow undercover space on either side of the platform. There's 2 standard PIDs, one for each platform, some unsecured bike racks, and a Mikey vending machine up one end, for the unfortunate circumstance that you're stranded here without a valid ticket. To exit the station, you have to cross the tracks. A sign on the centre building warns passengers to keep back from the edge of the platform. That's because Corio Station is so insignificant that half the trains running through on a regular Southern Cross service and all Warrnambool trains skip it and run past on full speed. While fun to watch and video, it soon hits you that you won't be leaving anytime soon. Corio Station is sandwiched between the refinery and the A10, with a small road leading towards the front car entrance to the Geelong Grammar School. Okay, there's a small access gate to the refinery too, but what sane worker is entering here at Corio Station? And I seriously doubt that a sizable amount of grammar students walk here to take the train. There's a small car park and absolutely no bus connections, other than this stop for train replacement coaches. Corio Station is the second least patronised station on the Geelong line, and it exemplifies the difference in infrastructure and attention between the southern and northern parts of Geelong. There are just no redeeming qualities for this station, save for watching the express trains fly past and imagining being blown up by this flammable liquid storage tank. F tier. Lara Station is a return to a basic standard of quality for the Geelong line. An island-style platform with a building in the middle. It was initially named Duck Ponds when it opened, and it was renamed with the township to Lara in 1875. The building remains as a great example of the old design of regional V-line stations, as the main building first opened in 1920 and has stood since, untouched by the regional rail revival. There is plenty of shelter and undercover areas at Lara. There's an indoor waiting area with a staff ticket office, toilets, and what I assume is a pop-up cafe window, but it wasn't open while I was there, and I haven't seen it open since. Like other stations, there's a locked bike area. The main flaw of this station in terms of passenger experience comes in the form of the level crossing to the station's south. The station's located to the east of the main business and residential areas of the town, and only has an entrance on the east side. As a result, even if you drive, you are most likely going to have to cross the rail line to access the platforms. If you're running late for your train, tough luck. This area is a major bottleneck which has existed for years, only exaggerated by Lara's recent growth. If there was one level crossing which most needed to be removed on the Geelong line, this would be it. Unfortunately, Lara is a very car-based, sprawling suburb. From the western end, it takes about 40 minutes to walk to the station, and there aren't footpaths the whole way, requiring you to cross busy streets and walk along the road shoulder at points. You really do need to take a bike, car or bus. There are 3 bus routes that serve Lara Station, the 10 to Corio Village, 12 to Lara West, and the 11 to nearby Avalon Airport. These buses are all right for the Geelong region, the 12 coming every 20 minutes during peak times and every hour on weekends. To compensate for poor walkability, the station has a large car park. Lara Station is a fine station, surrounded by a suburb built around cars. Despite not being rebuilt, I can't say that it does too much of a worse job than Waurn Ponds, and it's slightly better connected than North Geelong, but the car-dependent nature really lets this station down. High C tier. Little River is a small unstaffed station with 2 platforms, which serves the small town of the same name. Little River only has a population of 1,400 residents, so it's no surprise that its station is the least patronised on the line. The old bluestone buildings are still around, the subject of some restoration efforts over the years, and you can see an old information display. It's managed to retain its historic feel up to today. I had to wait here around 50 minutes for the next train, like Corio half of the trains run express through, and it actually wasn't too bad. The platforms are much like North Geelong, a bit narrow with a few benches and shelters, with the ends being bare. The buildings are sealed off, but they add a lot of character. Like many of the smaller stations on the line, there are no bins on the platform. For someone who likes trains, it's fun to see them run express at full speed through the station, but it is very loud, so for the regular person this would not enhance their experience. I was actually worried because while I was here, these 2 guys ran across the tracks as the gates were closing. Luckily they were okay. There is a lot of empty space around the station. Little River is a small town, but the houses are spread apart, so most people would use the small car park. Little River is a nice little stop. I would much rather spend 40 minutes here than Corio. I just really like the feel of the station. However, it lacks the facilities of a slightly larger and more frequently used station, and for that reason I'm putting it in C tier. Wyndham Vale is the first station on the Geelong line, which is basically a metropolitan station rather than a regional one. It was built as a part of the regional rail link, which took the Geelong line off the track used by the Werribee line and diverted it around the edge of Melbourne's western suburbs. Wyndham Vale station isn't even in Wyndham Vale, it's in Manor Lakes, but that's beside the point. Residents of the surrounding suburbs are squeezed onto V-Line trains, which are not designed for this use. It's almost always packed from here into the CBD. During peak hours, V-Line runs 9-car sets, which act as suburban trains, terminating here to manage the metropolitan demand. The platforms are pretty standard for a newly built station, seats and shelters across the whole length, and long enough for 9-car velocity sets utilised during peak times. There's a wide overpass, a kiosk, which was closed while I was there, staffed customer service, and an indoor waiting area. However, despite appearing modern from the ground, from the surface, it was put in a trench to maintain grade separation, so it's not the prettiest sight from the platform. Wyndham Vale Station is actually integrated alright by Australian standards into the centre of Manor Lakes, and it's a 6 to 8 minute walk from the suburb's shopping centre. There are also 4 bus routes, the 166, the 190, 191 and 192, which connect the station to Werribee, Hoppers Crossing and surrounding areas. Of course, there also has to be a large car park. Wyndham Vale Station is a perfectly fine station held back by the fact that it's still unelectrified, tacked on to the Geelong line to save money. The frequency, overcrowding and capacity issues that come from this decision mean that I can't give it more than a B tier. Tarneit is the highest patronised station on the Geelong line, and the second busiest station on the entire V-Line network after Southern Cross. It was built in 2015 as part of the regional rail link. There are currently additional stations in construction which are planned to ease the load on Tarneit, the first of which is West Tarneit, opening later this year. It still suffers greatly from being on the Geelong line, and as I said before with Wyndham Vale, electrification is far overdue. There is shelter along almost all of Platform 1, but it is quite sparse along Platform 2. Presumably because the station builders thought not as many people would be heading from Tarneit back towards Geelong. It's a strange oversight, but one commonly shared between these newer stations. It has a waiting room, kiosk, customer service desk, underpass between platforms, and a bike storage cage. The outside of the station doesn't have much cover or shade though, and there is this noticeable anti-homeless architecture. Tarneit Station is physically isolated from the suburb, bordered by large and busy roads. I can imagine walking or riding to this station would be very difficult. In addition to its large car park, Tarneit Station features a sizable bus exchange, connecting with 9 CDC routes. Frequencies range from 20 to 40 minutes, with more frequent services at peak times. Tarneit Station is a hard one for me to rank. It's the most utilised station on the line. It has all the usual components that make up a station. It just feels so desolate. I genuinely don't want to spend time here. At the very best, it's utilitarian. C tier. Deer Park Station, originally named Corio until 1889, is an elevated station serving the Melbourne suburb of the same name. It was rebuilt as a part of the level crossing removal project in 2023, resulting in grade-separated skyrail over the road. According to Wikipedia, it's the first station in Victoria to have a rooftop garden. This station is the point at which the Geelong-Warrnambool line and the Ballarat-Ararat line merge to head further into Melbourne, so it's possible to interchange here from Geelong to get back out to places like Ballarat or Bacchus Marsh without going all the way into Southern Cross. Deer Park is very similar in terms of amenities to the previous 2 stations. It has the bike storage, waiting area, etc. It is easier to get between platforms, and you can remain fully undercover while doing so. While I was here, they were testing the rollout of credit card touch-ons, which was nice to see, and it's going to increase convenience for passengers. I also really like the look of the station from the outside. They put a lot of effort into making the station look nice, with artwork and the previously mentioned grass roof. It might just be me, but I also like the look of the concrete viaduct. In my opinion, elevated rail just looks so much better than trenches. Trains at this station are also frequent for those looking to go into the city, as Melburnians can opt for either Ballarat or Geelong originating services. Every 10 minutes is better than some suburban lines. One common complaint across multiple Google reviews of the station is that the rain is a big problem. I see where they're coming from. The shelters could do a much better job protecting passengers from the rain. When I was here, it was sunny though, so I didn't experience this personally. There's 3 bus lines operated by CDC and transit systems, the 400, 420 and 422. The first 2 run every 20 to 40 minutes and the 422 runs hourly. This is passable and connects the station to the surrounding area. The station itself is surrounded by houses and bike paths, helping walkability massively. Overall, I like Deer Park Station. It does everything right. It's walkable, it's pleasant to be at, it's elevated rather than being in a trench, and by virtue of its location avoids the frequency troubles shared by Tarneit and Wyndham Vale. It doesn't escape the overcrowding though, and despite electrification being promised in 2018, it's still a fair way off 8 years later. I'd place this station in A tier. Southern Cross Station, previously known as Spencer Street until it was renamed in 2005, is the terminus of all regional train lines in Victoria. Alongside V-Line trains, the station serves suburban lines as well as interstate lines, the XPT to Sydney and the Overland to Adelaide. But we will focus on the Victorian regional experience here. Passenger experience. Where do I begin here? There are 8 dedicated regional platforms. Platforms 2 to 8 have an A and a B side. Any regional train can be on any platform, so before you even head further into the station, you need to check the app or departure boards to find out where your train is. This is frequently changed at the last minute or without updates to the app, so you really need to check the displays. There are also platforms 15 and 16, both of which have A and B sides, located on the other side of the metro platforms. The escalators on the Collins Street side of the station have been under maintenance for a very long time, requiring passengers to use the Burke Street Bridge exits during certain times of the day. This is very inconvenient, but as of writing, they're just starting to complete the works, so we won't have to deal with that problem for much longer. In my opinion, escalators should not be the only option up and down from a platform. I much prefer basic stairs, which would provide a manual alternative during escalator maintenance. And then there's the roof. Southern Cross is contracted out to be run by a private company. When they built the roof, they cheaped out and didn't provide adequate ventilation. This would not be a problem if all of the trains in the station were electric, but I don't know if you've noticed, our regional trains run on diesel. This results in the fumes from the idling trains being trapped under the roof, and the air quality being very low. It is bad for your health to hang around or next to Southern Cross. However, despite these massive flaws, as the main regional hub of the state, it does have some good features. There's a large waiting room, baggage storage, plenty of shops, even a supermarket, but overall, the experience as a passenger here is not very great. As a regional traveller, once you arrive at Southern Cross, the possibilities are almost endless. You're right on the western side of the CBD, Marvel Stadium is right next door, and just a few blocks down is the Yarra River and South Bank. Most metro lines run through the station, with the exception of metro tunnel lines, which require an earlier interchange at Footscray or a walk to Town Hall or State Library. Trams too are right outside the station. Every single regional line runs through Southern Cross, so you can access any V-Line destination. The Skybus can take you to Melbourne Airport, and there are multiple coaches that run interstate too. It's ironic that the best thing about Southern Cross are the ways you can get away from it. It's dirty, grimy, the air is choking. It's not a great first impression for travellers to Melbourne, and it's not a great place to wait around for a train back down to Waurn Ponds. Despite its connections being undisputedly S, I have to place Southern Cross in B tier, especially when you look at Sydney Central Station for what could be. It's just too flawed. Well, that wraps up our list. The Geelong line has a special place in my heart. It's always been my preferred way of getting into the city, and it has a lot of character, while also being really frustrating at times. Thank you to the YouTube channels Taitset, Qazzy, and Melbourne Railway videos for being my inspiration for making this and getting into learning about trains and rail in Victoria. This video took a lot of work to pull together, so it would mean a lot if you could tell me what you thought, whether you agree or disagree with my rankings. Thank you so much for watching.